Hi, you're listening to Celluloid Codswallop with James and Gemma. Sit down and enjoy yourself, grab a snack, and have some fun.
Hello and welcome to this week's Celluloid Codswallop. I, as ever, am James and I'm joined by the wonderful, the brilliant Joanne. Hello, Joanne.
Oh, thank you, James. Thank you very much. Are you looking to write or something with that description? I haven't been chatted up like that for a while.
Well, you know, you can but dream.
Desperate times call for desperate measures.
Now, speaking of, I was going to say desperate, but this isn't desperate. This is what we're going to be reviewing in this episode is a bit of cinematic history. This is a game changer in the entire superhero genre of films. And we decided for this episode that we're going to discuss Batman. Now, before the Salty Tadpoles go, but you've discussed Batman in two other instances. This is Batman, the Batman film, referred to generally as Batman 89, and it was the Tim Burton Batman film. And for me, it is my first ever experience of the cinematic world of Batman. And as the film went, it had a very checkered, but it had quite a long storied history. And I know at one point they were trying to look at doing maybe a comedy version again, and they looked at various different comedy actors, like maybe, you know, Chevy Chase or Bill Murray, I've gathered, was looked at. And they were even looking at doing something around 1982. But the interesting thing that happened is that with the 89 Batman film, it was a huge tonal shift. But what's even more interesting is that when I mentioned the idea of doing a comedy and casting a comedy actor to do a comedy, they actually took a very different route and, hired a comedy actor to play the dramatic part of Batman. And this was when they cast Michael Keaton, who we've discussed previously in the Batman Returns review we did. But it created something very unexpected. And I was going to ask, what sort of memories do you have of this film, Joanne, from when it came out, if you can remember that, or your knowledge of how the film came about?
Yeah, it's one that had been in production hell for quite some time. Apparently, even at one point, Robin was supposed to be in it, as he was supposed to be in Batman Returns as well. And Eddie Murphy was sought to be Robin, which would have been an unusual one. I mean, I think if people thought that Michael Keaton was a poor choice, they'd have lost their shit. Eddie Murphy being Robin. I'd love to have seen it, but certainly it was a long time coming, this particular Batman movie. I mean, the other Batman movie we had before that was, of course, Batman 66. The film, maybe it came out 67, I'm not quite sure, which was just a total and utter mess. Now, I know I find it hard to look back on fondly because my mum hated it. She absolutely hates that film. Every time it came on TV, she'd just turn it off. She just hated it so much. So the thought of getting another Batman movie like that would have just been absolutely awful. But this Batman movie, the hype was phenomenal for it. You couldn't go anywhere without seeing Batman. There was so much on TV. There was getting together the old 66 crew. I remember sitting watching an interview, and they were interviewing Adam West and Julie Newmar and Burgess Meredith, whoever else was alive at the time too, interviewing them about what did they think of the new Batman movie. And I remember seeing it being premiered and watching these people dressed. I didn't understand back then that they were cosplayers. I was just fascinated the fact that here was people who were dressed up as Batman and Catwoman and Joker and whoever else that was there, because it was that long ago now, I can't remember. And it just added to the sheer level of excitement. it was like we had never seen anything like that before. Nowadays it's easy to get blasé because, of course, we have all the Marvel hype.
Yeah.
And Marvel has pretty much taken over from the hype that DC had at that time. But yeah, to say that people were excited, and I particularly was excited to see this, was an understatement.
I mean, what was quite an amazing thing it's I cannot remember it because I'm, not old enough to have really taken it around the time. But I do recall it is one of my favourite films. But I remember, obviously, when it first came out, or when it was being put together, there were a lot of things that were problematic because, as I said, they chose Michael Keaton. Now, it's a Tim Burton directed film. So Tim Burton has a very unique style that we see in just about everything he does. But the people in choosing Keaton for Batman, he'd obviously worked with Keaton previously on Beetlejuice, but like they always said that like the rage level, if we think it was people kicked off when Affleck got cast, the response from people about Keaton was they would just sort of say this should be a daft, silly, funny comedy. And obviously, if you look at Keaton, he's not Batman is like we see with Affleck, he's a massive, big bruiser of a fellow. And Keaton is not that. He's not 6 foot tall. He's reasonably slight of build. But what they say really helped him get in the part is he was in a film called Clean and Sober, where he played a recovering alcoholic. And I urge anyone who wants to see an incredibly strong emotional performance, if they can hunt that down and see that film, it's probably one of the best films I've seen. He is phenomenal in it. But obviously, to round out a cast where there was all these issues of casting Keaton, they cast what you would call the more obvious choices, which was Nicholson as the Joker, a role which actually could have almost gone to Robin Williams. Poor chap's always been somewhere in the background on casting for a character within the Batman films. And then you had people like Pat Hingle playing Commissioner Gordon, who was I thought was quite an interesting choice, but he was an established actor. And it was the same thing when they were bringing in people like, Robert Wool, again, it was a bit different because he was a comedian. He plays a reporter in it, but it was a bit more of a comedic take for the characters. Where it could have been interesting is when they wanted, I think Sean Young originally been cast as Vicky Vale, who's the love interest reporter, but she fell off a horse and buggered her arm, and we got Kim Basinger. And then we've of course got Michael Gough, who was just phenomenal as Alfred. I think he's amazing in the part. But from a film perspective, when you see this, I mean, it was filmed over at Pinewood Studios. It was a humongous set piece, and visually, I think what really helped this film is we'd never really seen anything like it. It had nods to Metropolis, but visually, we'd never seen a film like this. And from like that first shot when you see this disgusting, vile, rundown Gotham, which the thing I always find interesting with these sort of films is when are they set? Because they have very much a leaning to the 40s look or the 50s look.
They do, yes. I read something. Did I read it? Or I have a very old DVD actually of Batman, and there was extras, but the extras weren't like what you usually have now, which were like small films, or documentaries. This was just text. Yeah, this was just text. And I can't remember whether I read it there or I've read it online, that apparently the design for Gotham was, it was Anton Furst again. I think it was Anton Furst.
It would be, yeah.
This is the guy, unfortunately, that killed himself in between that one and Batman Returns. And we'd mentioned it actually on that review.
We did, yeah.
Yeah, the whole idea was, this is what Gotham, it's an idea of somebody in the 1940s thinking what a city would be like towards the end of that century. And you can see, as you say, you can see Metropolis and other German expressionist type works, and even the statues that seem to glare down on the civilians, that the people who live there. Everything's very oppressive, and everything as well, I don't know whether you know, all seems to take place around the Monarch Theatre, which is where I think Batman had originally seen.
Yes.
Now, it doesn't seem to be yet Zorro. It's not Zorro in this, because I know the comics always had it that he'd come out of a showing of Zorro. So maybe Zorro wasn't something that they could get the rights for in this movie. I'm not sure, because they'd been, I think, some musical or something they had been in to see, judging by the program. So it's interesting that the film starts with Monarch, and it means so much to Bruce, and continuously goes back there all the way through, because there's a big square there, and with loads and loads of people. Now, I have to jump in and say this. This is a bit soon, probably, even to make this view, because we haven't really gone into the movie. But I don't know whether you noticed, every time that there's a scene in around that area, there are tens and hundreds of what looks like people. Well, they are people, but you know what I mean? There's so many people. Yeah. But whereas whenever it's Batman Returns, and there's the scene where the Christmas tree is, and where people are actually getting together, it looks like there's about 12 people, maybe 20 at the very most. There was even more penguins at one point than there was people. So I think it was quite interesting that Gotham in this particular film looked crowded, whereas it didn't in Batman Returns. It has the genuine. It doesn't look like a set. Doesn't look like a set at all.
Yeah.
It looks and feels like a proper, overgrown, unregulated city where crime dominates everything, and where the police force are unfortunately corrupt.
Yeah, I mean, that's something I think is very true. I have it as just running the background as a visual aid to me at the moment. And you are right to say it's a totally different style, because like the little portion I'm looking at now is, I mean, the start's great because it kind of mirrors what happened to Bruce as a little boy, you know, parents getting mugged by somebody. And when it cuts to the scene of Batman, when you first see him, but you don't properly see him, you just see him moving on the rooftop, and like, it's animated, but it's sort of like moving away to the background. They create this giant scope of a city that's, as you see it in like high def and a Blu-ray now. I'd love to see it in 4K, but it is kind of obvious that it's a matte painting. But they're giving it a much larger scope than they do in the film Batman Returns, where it almost seems to be one little area. But you know, what a great way of opening it. You have one of the actors from Auf Wiedersehen, Pet.
Yes. I could not remember his name. It's Moxie.
Yeah.
It's Moxie from Auf Wiedersehen.
And they all look like heroin-addicted criminals.
Oh, yeah. They two boys that just spend their days off their tits and robbing people. Well, they rob people first, and then they get off their tits because they won't have the money until they do that.
But that shot, when the first opening shot, when this tells you this is not, if you were thinking this was going to be, you know, kind of like the Adam West Batman, you see it's been completely different. The way you just see, you know, Batman suddenly come down from a higher point on the thing, but then when you see him completely open his cape and appear, because I know they said one of the big problems they had making this film is that they had to convince people that it wasn't going to be comedy, and they released a very short like teaser trailer of just things cut together, showing different shots, and it was so impactful for people that people were just buying tickets to see a film, to watch the trailer, and then just leaving. So they weren't actually watching the film.
Oh, wow.
You know, they were that desperate to see the trailer, they would just pay for the thing and then leave.
You see, this is the thing about this movie. It is very dark. Yes, there's comedic elements in it. This film is dark and slightly comedic, particularly in scenes with the Joker. The next one is more arty and slightly sadomasochistic BDSM type leanings. This one doesn't have any of that at all. It's a very different feeling. And
it is. I mean, just think about this thing of, just think about the fact that Keaton is holding somebody over the edge of a building. It's an opening shot where he says, "I'm Batman." You know, that really sets the sort of tone. And you've got to think about the impact this film also had when we came to think about the bat suit. That's the big one we've got to think about. We are now conditioned to see Batman in some sort of molded plastic or rubber, you know, style device, apart from, you know, Affleck's version. But up to that point, you know, for a superhero costume, it would be a guy dressed in tights and this totally changed the game for how a superhero would look.
It did, because the Batman in the comics was what Affleck would be like body-wise underneath that suit. He had the bulk, and he just had the dominant look to him that Keaton would never have been able to pull off without the muscular suit. Now, the thing about this film as well is I think it pretty much reflects the comics that were out at that time. That was the start of 86, 87 was kind of the start of the darker side of DC. The grim and gritty side, you had Killing Joke and The Dark Knight Returns by Frank Miller. And those apparently had an influence on this movie. And I can see that opening scene where he dangles Moxie over the side of the roof. There's actually a scene in The Dark Knight where he gets someone and he dangles.
He does. Yeah.
He blindfolds them. And whenever they're dangling over the side of the roof, they don't realize that they're actually dangling over the side of the roof. Admittedly, it's by their feet. And it turns out it's Batman's hand over that person's eyes. And the hand just comes away slowly in panels. And all you can see is Gotham stretched out below and the street scenes. And it gives you a real feeling of vertigo. So it was great that the comics had actually done something so dramatic as changed the perception of Batman, I think, to the public. Because there would have been so many people at that time, I'm convinced of, that will have still thought of the Adam West Batman, even though that had been decades before it. That was in the public consciousness. The holy whatever it is Batman and Splat and Kapow. Suddenly you had this Batman. Yeah, this is, the difference is phenomenal. I think it would be quite good to sit and watch the original Batman movie or even one of the episodes and then watch Batman. Yeah, because the difference is complete. Because that Batman back then defined the comics. I think that might have been the Silver Age, maybe Bronze Age. I'm not quite sure. I can't remember which way it divvies up. But that set the standard for the comics at that time. They were more comedic. And then in the 70s, they started to get darker again. And then in the 80s, it went, well, we had those phenomenal works from Frank Miller. So I think that if they had have come out with a comedy one at that time, it would have worked. They went the right way, and I think certainly these opening scenes, as you say, do set a precedence for the rest of the movie, that this is not the Batman that your parents or whatever, I'm not quite sure what generation it would have been by then, had watched on TV in the 60s. This is something new, it's something different. And here's a Batman that's not afraid to be the Dark Knight, to instill in criminals the fear that he had always wanted to do. And by this time as well, he's still seen as a shadowy figure, because the two guys on the rooftop are talking about how scary he is, and Moxie doesn't believe his friend. They think he thinks it's just some made off stuff, some druggies off their head, and they're seeing things. But no, Batman at that point seems to have a reputation for killing as well.
Yeah, because they mention how he's killed Johnny Gobbs, don't they? He's dropped him off a building. So this is also interesting. It's the first sort of time we see Batman as being someone. I know, like in the comics, he's never meant to kill people, but in these films, it's the first time we saw him actually killing people. But I mean, visually, I do like the way they did that mixture of the 40s style stuff against the obviously sort of like contemporary Batman, because they also have like 80s vehicles and things. But how did you view like Nicholson being cast in this? Because Nicholson visually would not be the most obvious choice of the Joker. He's a brilliant actor, but he's, a bit on the chunky side, keeps getting on a bit age-wise compared to like other people in the cast. I mean, he did have Jack Palance as his boss, who was brilliant. But how did you sort of feel with Nicholson? Because he was very good, but visually, as a comic book fan, he would not have been the choice you expected.
No, you would, as you say, you would expect somebody older and somebody skinny as well. Joker is always seen as the skinny character in the comics. The antithesis to Batman in his bulk. Then you have the skinny Joker, tall and lanky. Yet Jack Nicholson was a real surprise. Now, apparently, I think it was pretty much set up for him. It was never going to be anybody else apart from Jack, and he had a special contract drawn up where he only worked so many hours a day, and he raked an absolute fortune in from this movie.
Yeah,
millions. Because he took a cut off the actual merchandise and the opening, the box office takings as well. So
he got a percentage share, didn't he? I think he's had one that ran throughout for everything. I think he got it for the actual film, for any merchandise that came from it. For like, do they say in perpetuity, is that the thing? So he got it for like forever. He'd just be raking in money, because one of the producers said that he made a lot. After the producer with a
millions.
Yeah.
But I do think that yes, he was a surprising choice, but you got to hand it to him. He was phenomenal, absolutely phenomenal. He was funny. His delivery was great. I couldn't help but think at times, was he ad-libbing slightly as he got more and more into the character?
It's certainly possible. I mean, there are, I love like certain scenes that I really like, where he, for example, where it's Keaton being that sort of like vague, slightly out of there Bruce Wayne, like when you first see him in at his house when he's running some sort of party, because as he talks to Knox, doesn't he, who's the reporter, and says to him, "Oh, I've seen your stuff about Batman. I've seen your Batman piece, but obviously Batman's seen as some completely strange, out there thing that not everybody quite knows about." Which again adds to the ability that no one's quite sure who he is, because like when he first appears in it, and the police see him, they're just like, "What the hell are we watching here?" No one knows
that's right.
what they're actually looking at.
That scene actually in Bruce's mansion was clever because there's a lot of duality in it. There's certain things that Bruce hints at, like when Vicky Vale asks him, "Do you know which? Could you tell me where Bruce is, or could you tell me who Bruce Wayne is?" He went,
"Not exactly."
It's like he doesn't know.
Yeah,
he's not sure because he doesn't really see himself as Bruce Wayne.
Yeah,
he's all for himself. He's always Batman. Bruce is his mask, and Batman is the real him. So whenever someone asks him where is Bruce, he has to think, because he's thinking, well, who is Bruce? I'm not Bruce. I don't know where Bruce is. But there are a couple of incidents where there is definite hints at duality in his life, that he doesn't see himself as one person. Almost multiple personalities as our Bruce. But we've got, who we've got to talk about? Vicky Vale.
Yes. The beautiful Kim Basinger. And this is the sort of film that, pushed into the stratosphere from an acting point, and now she's sort of completely dropped off the map. But we had a wee chat about this, that you are not the biggest fan of Miss Basinger in this film.
No, I loved her when I first seen it. I thought she was really, really good. And I liked her after that as well. And I remember seeing her, I remember seeing 9.5 Weeks one time and thinking, whoa, she was some piece of kid. And then I watched it, I think it might have been a couple of years ago, Batman. I thought, gosh, I didn't realize her acting was so bad. Now, the one thing that does annoy me is she screams an awful lot. They should have made her more of a femme fatale, but she screams continuously, and I can't take that at all. But I was laughing when I was watching her, because all I could think was Michelle Pfeiffer's character saying, "Vicky Vale, don't tell me, our hostess, our ice skater." And I think Bruce must have a type, because Selena was blonde and Vicky's blonde, so there's definitely there's a type there for Bruce. But Vicky Vale, watching it again this week, I thought I was a bit hard about that. Kim actually did a really good job. She's believable as a reporter. Totally believable as a reporter. She does things like hides the roll of film in her bra, and she never gives up on a story. There's a touch of Lois Lane there too. That's just reminds me of a wee bit. Lois Lane, she is very much the investigative reporter, and Knox, who works alongside her, he doesn't let a story go either. I mean, dear help him, he really, really wants to get into Vicky Vale's knickers, and he hasn't.
Can't blame him. Can't blame him.
Yeah, I mean, he's only flesh and blood, but he's never going to get that but I give him credit. He doesn't give up. And he just always falls slightly short of sexual harassment in HR. So
I mean,
that's no bad thing.
I would say one of the problems Kim Basinger probably had is she was very short notice casting. She was sort of like brought in with only maybe a few weeks, notice before things for the film actually started going, or might have even been started because of what happened to Sean Young, who since went bonkers and tried to get cast in Batman Returns, and yes, went even more bonkers.
Yeah,
but, I mean, what I like in this film also is the fact that it's probably the first time I actually really saw the creation of the Joker, because if you knew Cesar Romero's Joker, he was a guy in funny face paint with his mustache still intact.
Yes, he refused to shave that off. Mm-hmm. I never liked his Joker.
No, I wasn't a great fan, but you see, for the first time, you basically, see the Joker's creation. He falls into a vat of chemicals, comes out, his plastic surgeon tries to fix him using, I hasten to add, surgical tools from the Rocky, not the Rocky Horror Picture Show, from the Little Shop of Horrors.
Oh, they're terrible, aren't they? I love the way you can see what I have to work for, and I thought, look, basic health and safety here. You haven't even cleaned those. Yeah. You've got a pig with those, and you haven't even cleaned them afterwards. That vat scene as well. The Axis chemicals is mentioned, I believe, in The Killing Joke. That's where I seem to remember the acid and the beginning of the possibility that the Joker came to life because of Batman. I can't remember whether it was in anything before that, but certainly that my override memory is of it in The Killing Joke. And it's a clever one to think that there we go, that Batman took a sociopath who is an egomaniac as well, because when Alicia, who was Jerry Hall, at the beginning of the film tells him that he looks fine, he says to her, I wasn't asking you, I didn't need your opinion. Yeah. And I thought, oh, you egotistical bastard. Look, there's Jerry Hall and there's you. And I thought, there's a woman who will, that's really, she is the Melania Trump of the movie. She will do anything to get power, to get money. So her backstory, it would have actually been really interesting to know what her backstory was. You got the impression she was a model, but was she a failed model? How did she end up in that? I know it's not relevant to the overall story, but I kind of now would have liked to have known a wee bit more about Alicia and why she was so attracted to Jack Nicholson. Obviously, she likes a bad boy because she's with Grissom, but she must be what's called a gerontophile, attracted to older people, because that it wasn't. It never made sense to me, that hookup.
I mean, on the again, looking at the strange acting front, I think one of the things that really helps Keaton in this is his eyes. He's got very, with his sight, it's very expressive. They're saying that's one thing that helped to get him cast in it. I gather one of the reasons they cast Jerry Hall in this is because Tim Burton said he wanted somebody who could be, she was obviously a model, but someone who could have been a model, but also she was very good at fainting.
Those big twig-like legs of hers that just took her down every time. There's another thing about Keaton's his eyebrows. His eyebrows are phenomenal. It's like, he reminds me when you watch RuPaul's Drag Race now and you see the drag queens and they have Botox put in above their eyebrows to really lift the eyebrows up, and you would think that Keaton had Botox on each eyebrow. It's his eyebrows are just phenomenal, and I don't remember noticing his eyebrows in Batman Returns, but at that stage they're almost like ticks. So they start low where his nose is and just keep going up. Or how you would draw a seagull, if you know what I mean. If you just sort of draw a stick seagull and that's his eyebrows, they were phenomenal. But he was such a good choice in the end. He
was brilliant.
Fuck you, critics. I'm just brilliant at this, because I think DC had thousands and thousands of letters of people, because that was back then, people writing in to say, no, you can't possibly choose him. He's the wrong man. And it just shows you how we've never really got beyond going mad whenever we believe it's the wrong person. for our favourite role. Well, it was letters back then. Now it's emails. Now it's social media campaigns, and people will just not. We've never learned. We just won't let the studios just appoint somebody. No. We already have to have someone in our head or something that we think isn't right. So, and Michael Keaton proved them wrong, and so did Michelle Pfeiffer, because it was the same thing when she was appointed Catwoman.
And one thing visually I always think stunning about this film is, because I love Art Deco. From a personal standpoint, I love Art Deco. It's one of the things I absolutely adore about Batman Returns, even more so. But this film has some wonderful. I mean, the sets that Anton first did were just unbelievable. But the Art Deco pieces are amazing. The houses, I mean, because it was very different when they first filmed this one. Because of course they filmed it in Nebworth Hall, and other houses, actually proper internal houses for Wayne Manor, as opposed to using just a set in, say, Returns. But one of the interesting things they said they had to do when they made this film is they had to put, going back to sort of discussing the messed up look of the Joker, who was interestingly named Jack Napier in this as a nod to, I think, just to give him Jack Nicholson's name, but also as a nod to Alan Napier, who was Alfred in the 66 TV series.
That's right. I was going to say, why do I know that name? That's where I've heard it.
And they had to do like this weird thing with his makeup that I always thought was good, whereas they had to have him wearing, I think it was makeup on top of makeup in a scene where he starts wiping he's supposed to wipe the makeup off, so they had to put like makeup underneath his grease paint.
Yes.
White makeup they had to wipe off. It was a really weird thing they had to do, like layer upon layer. It's amazing his face didn't drop off.
I know, because I did think at the time, because he wipes his face when he's with the gang bosses, and he's telling them that he's taken over now. And after he's fried one of them, which is a really, really funny scene, he starts to wipe his face with his hanky. And I thought, did he have some white pan stick in his hand to start putting white over the top of what looked like really bad orange face paint? And then he wiped his skin. And it wasn't that way, no?
No, I'm sure I've got it right. That they put, he had to then wipe off makeup that was on top of white makeup. It was, layer upon layer of stuff. I mean, I will pick one thing I don't like about this film, and it will not create me a lot of fans, the Prince music. I'm not against it.
Really?
Well, I do like Prince, and I unfortunately only came to appreciate Prince more when he died. His music, how phenomenally good it is. But for me, there's like the first scene we sort of really see Batman, again, a big sort of like shot of Batman, is where he's saving Vicky Vale because she's been lured to go to the museum, which looks like the inside of a bank, actually. Yep. Yeah. The Flugenheim, based on the Guggenheim.
The Flugenheim. Rather than the Guggenheim, we got the Flugenheim.
But it's that sudden introduction of Prince's music with the Joker dancing around, and it doesn't sit with me. I just can't.
Oh, wow.
Daft. They're all dancing around. It's a bit daft. It seems out there. But interesting, I've gathered Tim Burton did not want all this big inclusion of Prince's stuff in it. It was pushed by John Peters, who was a producer on this. And it is the king of production for like the Superman films as well. I'll just plug, if you get a chance, watch The Death of Superman Lives. The Death of Superman Lives. What happened? Phenomenal stuff. Great documentary. But yeah, it just seems a very odd little scene for me, but clearly you have a different view of it.
I love that scene. The Party Man song, I love that song. And I just adored the scene. The way they timed the painting of the photograph or of the paintings, they overpainted in time to the music, and Jack's dancing away and pretending to be one of the ballerina statues. And even they painted the dollar bill sign on one of them. Oh gosh, I can't remember what the president was. And
George Washington.
George Washington, that's what it was. I absolutely love that. I love the bit too and I meant to look this up, where Jack stops them from slicing a painting and it's a particular artist. Unfortunately, I can't remember who it is. Very graphic, gruesome sort of designs, and it looked like a slaughterhouse.
I'm literally looking at that right now.
Do you know what? I absolutely adore that scene. And every time the music goes on, sort of the feet go and I sort of bop up and down a wee bit. And I thought it was a great. I actually thought it was really clever, because he has the big ghetto blaster as well. And the sound quality in the whole place, like this ghetto blaster, if it had have been that great a sound quality, I don't think the ghetto blasters back then would have been just as a good sound quality either.
You've got to feel sorry for that henchman, though. Yeah, you've got to feel sorry for that henchman. His only job is to lug around a heavy ghetto blaster that's probably like 10 pounds or something.
And deafened as well. I was thinking from a health and safety point of view, that boy would have been well deaf by now. But no, I absolutely love that scene. And the fact that it's Vicky sitting at the table going, that bastard stood me up, drumming her fingers, and the little box arrives. And she opens it up, and there on a really badly scrawled note by a child in crayon, put this on now. And the gas comes through and people start dropping. Now, I don't know whether they drop dead or whether they're just knocked out, because the interesting bit is whenever Joker arrives, the doors to the Flugenheim open and the gas disperses very, very quickly. And I thought, well, if that was poisonous gas, that would have killed Joker and his henchmen as soon as they walked in. So I did wonder, was it gas that has very short lifespan? Has it only a certain length of time for efficacy? What is the case? Who did it? Because you're not told whether anybody died at that event. It's not really. Not really mentioned after that.
I think the idea is they're supposed to be dead, because when I rewatched this, you see there's like a point when Joker's like looking at all different pictures, and for some reason he's had pictures taken of Vicky Vale and decides that he wants to get rid of poor Alicia, wants to get rid of her, which becomes apparent in this scene when he's like scarred and she tops herself later on. But you see him looking at pictures of nerve gas that's been basically tested from like 1977 by the CIA, and you just see pictures of these dead people with fixed grins on the face. So clearly he's just had that replicated, and
he's inspired.
I suspect he has inspired to kill him. But when Batman appears, it's great. He comes through a skylight, and that wonderful line where does he get those wonderful toys?
Yes.
The greatest element at this point for me is we get to see the Batmobile, and it's still my favourite Batmobile, which is this just ginormous. We'd never seen anything like this film-wise, because we had Adam West Batmobile, which for all its greatness looks just very, very impractical. I'm not saying this is practical, but that one's really impractical. But God, it's Anton first design again, wasn't it? I think. What a vehicle! Yeah,
because Anton had actually designed the Batmobile. I think it's an Impala. It wasn't. They tried a Chrysler and they tried a couple of other famous makes of cars, and it didn't work out. Though the only thing I have to say about this car is the turning circle's very bad in it. Because at one point when the Joker's chasing them, the Batmobile actually shoots out some sort of grappling hook, and it takes it and it hits one of the many gridirons that seem to support Gotham City. And right enough, if you're in London, or not London, New York, you will see that all over the place. These big iron girders outside site places. It's like everywhere's continuously being worked on and supported, and it's like the place, it's almost like it'll fall down. But the grappling iron, when it shoots out and it wraps itself around a girder, it then helps the Batmobile do a very short, tight turn. And the other cars, being the big jalopies that they are, just go straight on. But I think I would like to think the Batmobile was more flexible than that, but not at this point, because parking it must be terrible. If you get in somewhere, how do you get back out again? That length of thing. How do you reverse back out in Tesco's?
Yeah. The other thing the Batmobile is just wonderful in this. The only thing I always wonder, because it's got, I think, tail lights off a Ferrari, The front lights, believe it or not, are for something like a Honda Accord. Those little lights at the front. But
Wow.
I'm thinking you wouldn't really see much with those little lights, would you? With the sheer size of the car.
No.
I don't know how much they'd really.
Yeah, I noticed that actually because when they're flying back again, they're heading down these dark country roads, and you would not be able to see anything at all. It's pitch black. It's there is no light going into the verges at all. Just these little tiny bits at the front. Just as a small aside, one of the bikes that we have is an old 1988 CBR 600. And it's what's called a jelly mold frame, but the front headlight is just a square headlight. And if you ride that bike in the dark, it's a bit like the Batmobile lights. The light that it throws onto the road is just a square light. It's like riding along, trying to ride the bike in the reflection of a TV screen, of an old time TV screen. And it's horrendous. So I like to think that, you cannot see a thing. It's so bad. So generally speaking, you don't ride that bike at night. But the Batmobile would be the same. I don't know how Bruce makes it back. And I wonder, is Vicky Vale actually sitting in the passenger seat? Not so much worried that she's possibly been kidnapped by this strange man in a rubber suit. But the fact that she can't see the road. And she's thinking, well, how can he see? A bit of self-preservation going on there, I think.
I mean, I do love in this film, and it's slightly different to in Returns. You get a real idea of the humongous size of the cave, the way it was shot. It's just like this massive expanse, isn't it? I'll tell you one thing that I dislike with this film quite a lot is the mask of the Batsuit. It's just and I get it to a degree because it's probably a new way of doing it, and it would be harder to tell who the person is. But it's just this giant piece of rubber. Compared to what they turned it into, compared to what they turned it into in Batman Returns, where it was a lot more face fitting and light. It just looked aesthetically better. I mean, this film we do definitely owe the superhero head turn, don't we?
Yes, there've been no flexibility at all in that whatsoever, and it is interesting again just to even compare the two movies, because it's funny, I haven't watched Batman Returns so much more than Batman, and just being immersed in this very artistic environment and these set pieces, as you say, everything seems to be it's not a big lot, it's just these small areas, and everything seems to take place in these small areas, and they're obviously they're not realistic as such, but Batman is realistic, and just feeling it's so completely different, and that goes then into the Batsuit, because the Batsuit is more a work of art in the second one. I think what saves Batman Returns from a visual point of view is that there's more in the, I'm trying to think, it's more in the how everybody looks at Batman Returns. Batman is how the city looks. I mean, it has been described that Batman, one of the other characters, was the city. 100%. Yes. It was a living, breathing thing. In the second one, the city takes a back step, and the people actually come forward more, and what they were is more important than almost in their surroundings. As nice as they are, and they're used so well, Penguin's lair being an example, both his lairs, and Selina's house, but you still feel like you're almost watching a play compared to what Batman.
The Expanse, I mean, like if you're just looking at, say, the great scene when they go into Vicky Vale's apartment, which if I, had like disgustingly large amounts of money, I would love to have an apartment styled like hers, because the sheer Art Deco wonderfulness of it, the chairs. I mean,
big windows.
I love Art Deco. I love that. I mean, it's all bullshit, because in reality you're probably not going to find something as nice as this, unless you're spending millions upon millions. But like the entire layout of it, with the wonderful, as you said, the windows, the beautiful Art Deco setup, with probably a bit of a nod to 80s design as well in it. So it's not all Art Deco. You can see the little 80s things. But what a wonderful scene where you basically see the great "you want to get nuts" scene.
Oh, yes.
With Keaton. I mean, that's just brilliant where he challenges Jack. Now, did you perceive there's a part he sort of goes to him and goes, "I know who you are." He goes, "Let me tell you about this guy, Jack." Now, I want to know what you think. Is he saying Jack and describing Jack to Jack? Or is he trying to act like he's just describing Jack as as a person? If that makes sense. It's always one that's like confused me.
It is a confusing thing, and it never ceases to amaze me. Every time I watch it, I think, what is he getting at? The whole scene is a bit disjointed. It's funny because Bruce has gone a bit nuts, but you're not really sure why. I'm never really sure why he did what he does. Now, admittedly, he gets completely thrown off track when Joker says to him, "Ever dance with the devil in the pale moonlight?" I asked that of all my prey. And Bruce's, "Shit, I heard that the night my parents were shot," and it throws him. But I don't know what he was actually planning to do. You can see how it turned because it threw him off balance. Why did he do that? What was the idea of the crazy thing? And lucky for him, he had the silver plate put under his jacket, which you can't see. There's no outline there, and it's a quite a substantial plate. But how did he know Joker was going to shoot him? Why would he want Joker shooting him? I actually, as much as I enjoy watching that scene, it makes no sense.
I can only assume it was like him taking a wild guess of protection and working out how he could get out of the situation. But yeah, it's a very strange little scene. I mean, watching this film, I tell you why, I have had the pleasure of meeting this man, who I feel incredibly sorry for. Watching this is Billy D. Williams, who they cast as Harvey Dent. Mm-hmm. As the district attorney. Of course, Billy D. Williams would be thinking, in the future, I am going to be Two-Face. Now, he did finally get to play Two-Face many, many years on in the Batman Lego film. He got to voice the character.
I didn't realise. I love Batman Lego.
But as a little side note, when I met Billy D. Williams, I actually got him to sign my very old Batman like storybook thing. Got him to sign his picture. So that was really cool. The guy did look like he wanted to go to sleep. Poor man was exhausted. I remember saying to him, I said, all these people here to see, it's great. It's a testament to you. I said, how are you? He said, I'm just so tired. Poor man. I think he was really, really, well, he's in his 80s, isn't he? And I think probably he was also jet lagged beyond belief, poor bloke. So.
Oh, no, that would be hard. I mean, just seeing a line of people, I think I do feel sorry for them because I would say in the early days, it would be very flattering and exciting. And then after a while, you would just get fed up with it. But at the same time, you don't want to let your fans down. Yeah, they shafted him. He should have definitely been Two-Face. Now, okay, admittedly, the films, after Batman Returns are shit. But he would have been.
Yes.
I mean, I think it was definitely better that for his own sake that he didn't actually in the end get cast as Two-Face. But quite a brave, an unusual choice at that time as well was even having a black actor for what was a white character in the comics, and one of the few black faces actually in the movie. There's
that's true. Yeah,
I think I counted. There's a henchman. There's the wife of
there's a cop.
Billy D. Yeah, there's a cop. That's right, good cop. And there's maybe no more than 5 people of color in that whole movie, and it's judging it by today's standards, I found it a very white film, white film, and I thought
the cop does. To be fair though, the cop does have a name. He's called Robert.
Bless him, actually give him. But one of the baddies is a black guy, and but it's shockingly bad for diversity, that movie. That is the one criticism. I know we're now 2021, and I like to think that we're more conscious of these things. Certainly we are. I know, you can't help but be shocked at if you were a Batman fan and you were a person of color and you go to see this movie, it's all white people on screen.
Yeah.
There's absolutely no diversity at all. None. And even in terms of females in the film, you have Vicky Vale. Who else have you got? I actually don't think I can't think of another woman in that film.
Alicia.
Alicia, yes. Alicia. So Vicky
Poor
Vale screams
Alicia.
an awful lot. Yes, and the other one has a scarred face and is a
Kills
victim
herself.
and then kills herself. There's not really damsel in distress and victim of some sort of domestic abuse. You could really pick this film apart for that. Really pick it apart. But then I suppose that kind of goes against what the film was trying to do. And it is easy to criticize something from a 2021 perspective, a film that's from 1989. So I'll try not to go down that route, but just watching it now, I was slightly uncomfortable at times when those thoughts came into my head. Just how white the screen was. Still enjoyed the movie, but still.
Speaking of white, very white, let's go and look at what happens with the Joker in this. I mean, obviously, the idea is that the city's going to run this like, is it like 200 years or something, this festival for Gotham? And it obviously gets cancelled because the Joker's creating madness. And then he says, I'm going to like dump a load of money on the city. It's 20 million in cash. You know, you can all have it. I'm wonderful. Look at me. I'm on, you know, because he goes on screen wearing his pancake orange human style makeup. So he doesn't look like the Joker, and he's sort of saying, you know, will Batman challenge me? Now, I find it odd that they decide to have him doing that and killing people with the Smilex gas, but because he's also like poisoned the entire city, hasn't he? So there's a scene where people can't use deodorant and stuff. Now, whenever I see that,
reporters.
I'll tell you the thought I have though. I'd be all right, and I know I'd be all right because I stockpile this stuff. So if this was me, I'd be the best smelling guy in Gotham because I'd be like, well, just keep rationing what I've got even more.
Yep, exactly. I have that many jars of moisturizer and cleansers and toners and eye cream. Yep, deodorants, perfumes. Yeah, I mean, I thought that. Yeah, there would be no bother at all. We would be hot, James. To everybody else, we would look hot because we'd be.
So basically, it'd be me, you, and Simon would be the people smelling great and looking great.
Pretty much it. Everybody else would just be stinky. I mean, those poor reporters. Her hair's all over the place. And it's really greasy, and he's got spots on his face because they can't wear any makeup either. Nobody knows. I like that because that was so Joker. That's so Joker. From the comics as well, with him tinkering with chemicals, because I think that's the one thing that's easy to forget about Joker is that he's a genius. He's probably as smart as Batman. In a different environment, the two of them could have been in college together because is just that smart.
They say that, don't they, when they're discussing, he's looking at Jack Napier's file. And they're saying, like, you know, I think some like, above average intelligence, but like basically sociopathic tendencies, violence, etc. So he's clearly Jack Napier's clearly an incredibly intelligent man, because he was like the henchman. He was like he was probably like one of the guy before he kills his boss who set him up over Alicia. I'm assuming he's like the second in command sort of thing. So he's obviously a smart cookie. He's no daft guy. Now, what I do find, I mean, this is like our first big ability to see the Batwing as well. We might have seen the Bat Chopper and some shite bat played in the TV series. But I mean, this is the first time we sort of saw the Batwing. You are right about this constant obsession with showing the Monarch in this film, doesn't there? But
yeah, all the time. Because the big scene of the balloons with the gas in it, the Smilex gas in it, it's all in that area. And people are watching Joker's broadcast as well. There's some kids watching it from I think there's TV screens or something around there. But again, the Monarch is always in the background. Why? I suppose it's a nice focal point for the movie, but considering that the place, Gotham City, looks huge. It is interesting that it centers around that, but then perhaps that particular area is supposed to be like New York's Times Square.
More than likely, because I can only assume that is the thought. And what I do really like is the fact that when it comes to like Batman and the Joker, facing off when he's in the Batwing, I love that scene where he's like, come on, you gruesome son of a bitch, and then shoots him with a giant gun.
That gun! How the hell he got that down? You couldn't sit down with a gun like that because you couldn't bend at the waist. But did you notice as well that with the Batwing, when it flies up above the clouds and it stops ever so briefly to be outlined by the moon, and it looks like the bat symbol.
Yeah,
and then it just drops really back out again. So clever. Love that.
Well, I also go on. Sorry, Joanne.
No, I was just going to say, you were saying, come on, you gruesome son of a bitch. The lines in the film are great, because one of the lines I'm just thinking about as well is whenever the Joker sees Vicky Vale for the first time. Stop the press, who's that? Where does he get those wonderful toys? There's so many quotes, and whenever I hear the bits and pieces in the films, that actually takes me back to the Prince music, because Prince was using the voiceovers from the film. I thought he actually did it quite well, to be honest. She's great, isn't she? Oh yeah. And when Bruce asks Alfred what he thinks of Vicky Vale, Vicky Vale. Now there's a problematic scene. Before we get into the fights and everything, big problematic scene. The reveal of Bruce Wayne as Batman, Vicky Vale by Alfred. No fucking way. That would have been Alfred's last day in the job. Alfred would have been waking up the next day, if he was lucky, with a P45 on his desk, bedside cabinet, and a big fuck you. How? Because he compromises Bruce Wayne. Bruce has hardly known this girl. In the big scheme of things, this all seems to happen over the space of a week. Bruce has known this woman for maybe 3 days at the very most. And Alfred's already decided that he's going to tell Vicky Vale who Bruce is. And not only is he going to tell Vicky Vale, he's actually going to show her the Batcave as well. Like, Bruce must have... Bruce looks genuinely shocked.
That's not a euphemism either.
No, it isn't. There was... Admittedly, he did see her Batcave before that, I have to say. And actually, because... The one thing that strikes me about that scene, I'm completely going off on a tangent here, but I'm having kind of flashbacks as bits of the movie come back to me.
It's all right. I love when you have your little tangent, so it's all good.
I can't help it. Because I don't really think linear. I think that's what the problem is. They have sex that night, and I thought Vicky must have come out of the house all pruned and groomed with a good underwear on, because she actually says to Bruce, she hints to Bruce that they had sex that night. I can't believe I did that. And I thought, come on, love. For you to have sex that night, you must have everything waxed. And all the nice gear on underneath. Because no woman in their right mind will go on a first date and not be ready, just in case. Just in case. I mean, she went to his house. And Alfred actually seems quite delighted that the two of them were having sex the night before, because he meets her on the stairs with a big grin.
Well, let's be honest. Bruce Wayne, Batman, is mental. So, and Alfred is basically like his dad. So he's probably just happy that he's actually doing something slightly on the normal side.
Oh, that's true. No, Bruce was supposed to be, in the comics, Bruce was a playboy. So Alfred was probably quite used to meeting a variety of women on the stairs in the morning. Maybe this is the first one that he had met. Actually, he thought, your mum would actually be very proud that you have met a nice girl for a change, instead of some socialites that you're just using.
They always sort of say that the difference. So if you look at this film, again, not jumping out. Well, I'm going to jump ahead slightly, but the ending, it's set in the cathedral. It's just absolutely bloody brilliant.
Oh yeah.
But one other thing that I find quite funny is because we've seen Returns, this helps, but it seems to be the integral thing on the design for any Batman's piece of kit is that it has a little flip switch surrounded by the yellow and black hazard line things that control all these major stuff. Because in Returns, that's what pretty much controls, that switch controls everything in the Batmobile. And in the Batwing, he flicks it to do things as well. So it must be like Bruce's favourite, toggle colour switch thing for controlling stuff. But the thing that's interesting is, like you said about the idea of that Bruce is very wealthy, billionaire. More than likely, I think people would probably have an idea who he is in most of the continuity, because they used to say this about like Affleck's Batman, that supposedly people don't know who he is. Well, certainly, Clark Kent doesn't sort of have a clue he is initially. And they're saying, I remember Kevin Smith said this, talking to somebody about the film. He said, well, he's a billionaire, so they used Donald Trump as the example. He said, well, most people know Donald Trump is, even if he wasn't president, most people would have an idea of who he is. And it's true, if you think about it, most people know who Elon Musk is. Most people know who, people like Bill Gates are for this immense wealth. So you think somebody would have a clue who Bruce Wayne is. But they said, whereas in this universe, it's a bit different. He's supposed to have, I think his money's supposed to come from textiles and old money, old industrial money. So maybe he's not as well known. Maybe he keeps himself a little bit away rather than being this big sort of party animal.
Yeah, that's a good point. Or he's not on the scene as much for people. Mm-hmm. It does make sense. Because the more that you're on the social scene, the more people, there'll be more photographs of you for people to compare and for theories to start. But then in the DC universe, you can put a set of glasses on and nobody knows who you are.
Well, I think
not very bright.
Yeah, I think in this idea is even more of a bit of a loner. So probably that party at the start is a bit of a strange thing, because the interesting difference is this Bruce has a party. I would not see Bruce in Returns having parties at all.
Well,
I get the impression he'd be the real weirdo on a hill.
Yeah. Just Alfred and him. Alfred having to install lights and everything on this roof. Poor man, the things that he did on him at that age. Because we talked about that one in that review of Batman Returns. I wonder, now I think about it, do you know the way in Batman Returns Bruce is sitting and he's all broody sitting in the dark? I wonder, was that a month after Vicky Vale had dumped him?
When you said he was not,
yes, he's cracking one
off in the dark, That's
right.
I just had to interject that.
Yeah, how could I forget that?
Ruined it.
Forgot about
Every
that.
time I watch it now.
Spoiler! But when he's sitting cracking one off that night, I wonder if he's cracking one off to Vicky Vale because she has dumped him. Is that why he's sitting in the dark?
Hey, Joanne, I'd crack one off to Vicky Vale's.
Well, you'd sit and cry your lumps out if Vicky Vale left you. So maybe he's sitting that night pining over Vicky Vale, and that's why he's sitting in the dark, because he's like a teenager in his bedroom.
That's a good point.
There's a continuity now between the two films. This was the bit
that one
that nobody else seen. So it kind of makes sense now why Bruce is sitting in the dark is because he's mourning Vicky Vale.
Yeah. I mean, it's an interesting little. Yeah, it's an interesting little scene though when it comes to the massive fight on top of the cathedral, where basically the Joker has now got Vicky, and he's holding a hostage while dancing with her in some weird manner. But Batman, who's somehow still alive after crashing the Batwing, is having to fight various henchmen after a bell has fallen down and destroyed all the steps you go up to get up this cathedral. I don't know if it's meant to be humorous or not, but the scene when you see, when Pat Hingle turns up as Commissioner Gordon, he tries to move the bell.
That scene as well, there's a bit where Vicky Vale's shoe falls off.
Yes.
And the Joker sniffs it, or does he? Or did I make that bit? Does he sniff her shoe?
He kisses it. He kisses it.
He kisses it. That's right. I remember thinking, is he going to sniff her shoe? He kisses it. It was like a really bad version of Prince Charming.
Mm.
Whoever the shoe
Probably
fits, I
sort of
shall
like-
marry.
That's probably sort of the plan. I mean, it's like, I also do like the part where it looks like he's going to kill himself, and it's like a fake gun. And I do like, I know you're not a great fan of Kim Basinger in this, but I do like a reaction where she sort of like laughs, but you also see her almost start to cry, hysterically. Because, well, she's just in a
Yes.
horrendous situation. But I do think that's quite a good bit of work from her.
Yeah, that was very. I mean, though I criticised her on the penultimate watch, definitely this time I was a lot more on her side, and I thought she was much better than I had given her credit for. The screaming,
she's a
I
very
could do
good
without.
actress. Yeah, she's a very good actress.
She is very good, and I think I maybe picked up on the nuances of her acting this time that I didn't before. And one of those was that scene, because that was a real shock where you would the laugh and the crying almost happens at exactly the same time.
I also, something that's a bit of a shame with this film really is that we're still waiting for Michael Keaton to get an Oscar. Now, I think he should have had an Oscar twice. I think he's been deserved of Oscars but hasn't got them. But the lineup for this film would have been great, historically now, because you would have had, Kim Basinger's got an Oscar, Nicholson's got an Oscar, and if Keaton had got one, you would have had all the three principals as Oscar winners, which would have been brilliant. I also do find the scene now. I can't remember what the original age range on this film was, but I think it's a 15 on the DVD. But you've got the scene.
Yeah, that surprised me when I've seen 15 on the DVD, because I thought it had been a 12.
Where Vicky suddenly sees Bruce as Batman scuttling around. Well, scuttling is the wrong word. He's quietly moving around, and she then basically goes to. I interpret this now as an adult and as a teenager as the fact that she's going to like blow the Joker.
Yes, I do that now too. Now, years ago I hadn't. It didn't occur to me at all. But now it does. It's so evident. And it's the look on the Joker's face. Is she really going to suck my dick? Vicky Vale's going to suck my dick.
I also think the cool bit is like when she's kissing down his arm, so like I love purple, she actually has to remove fluff from her mouth.
Yes.
She gets up his coat. But it's just this great scene now, like, Batman turns back on the Joker, everything that's happened to him, because he's saying, he quotes the Danced Over the Pale Moonlight, cracks him one. They start fighting. I do love the fact that when the Joker punches him in the stomach, he pretty much breaks his hand on his body armor.
Yes.
But he's sort of, he's saying, "You made me," and I love how, they have that thing where the realization when the Joker twigs who he is, that he's Bruce Wayne.
But did you not notice with the Joker at that point and Batman says, "You made me," and Joker goes, "What are you talking about?" He is, for that moment, he's absolutely sane.
Yeah,
and Batman,
true actually. Yeah,
I hadn't noticed it until I watched it this week. That at that moment in time, the roles are completely reversed. Right at that moment in time, Joker is sane and Batman is the madman, and Joker's trying to reason with the madman.
Because I got it the wrong way around. Because he says to him, "I'm going to kill you," and Joker's saying, "You made me. You idiot, you made me. You dropped me that vat of chemicals." And he's saying, "You made me first," and you're right. Because he's even trying to sort of barter with him. I guess, like, there's the comedy element, but he's sort of saying, "You never hit a guy with glasses," sort of thing. And you are right. He's properly trying to barter with him because he, as you said, maybe he's been the more level-headed, sane person there. And Batman's just become evil, wanting to kill him.
I think Joker's genuinely scared at that time. Scared that he's face to face with a madman. There's the duality again. Yeah. There's who the Joker used to be. There's who the Joker is now. And Joker's still able to have the bleed over of the person he was before. But once Batman is dressed as Batman, he never really becomes Bruce Wayne.
I mean, you've got to think also, looking at the Joker, if we go back to the fact that, we're going to go slightly realistic here with a thought. So Jack Napier obviously sees himself as very handsome. He's very vain. ladies' man sort of thing. With what's happened to him, with what he's been turned into, you can sort of see how he would go crazy, because the psychological damage it would cause him. I mean, he's a madman to begin with and a murderer. But imagine you've always held yourself as looking this way, being very much focused on the way you look, and then you've been turned into some deformed, scarred mess. It's going to really screw you up, isn't it? You're not going to be able to function properly at all.
And he still has his henchmen, and he doesn't look after them either.
Well, I don't think his henchmen have much choice, do they? Do all the kills.
Not. Is it Bobby? Is his main henchman? Apparently, that was actually a friend of Jack Nicholson.
He
kills him.
One of his pals.
Yeah.
Bob. Yeah.
Bob. Yeah, he kills him, which for some reason this time I watched, I thought that's so sad. He just killed him because he had stuck by him. Yeah, poor Bob. And I think Bob. That's right. I'm calling him Bobby. I'm thinking of. Bobby comes from The Expanse. That's one of the characters in The Expanse. Because Bob is there whenever Jack shoots. You get the impression it's Bob anyway. Jack shoots Bruce's parents. Because the actor looks a wee bit like a younger version of Bob. And he's trying to encourage Jack to get away from the scene after Jack shoots Bruce's mum and dad. So the two of them have been together for a long, long time. And the Joker just kills him with not a thought. Yeah. Not a blink of an eye at all. The only time we see him starting to regret it, well, not even regret things, maybe a sudden realization of the situation he's in, is that moment with Batman when he tries to reason with him.
I mean, I do think it's... Yeah.
Yeah. No, I was just going to say in the comics, there's almost like the Joker's madly in love with Batman. He thinks that Batman can't exist without him. And certainly the Joker can't exist without Batman. Without Batman, there's no reason for him to be. You don't get that in this movie, admittedly. There's not that connection. Each one, it doesn't matter. The connection is the fact that there was the murder. That's the only connection between them. But there's not that grand passion, as it were, between the two characters. But I think the Joker shouldn't have been. If I can rush towards the end a wee bit, I don't think he should have been killed. Yeah, just a thought. I don't think they should have killed him. I think it should have been left.
Yeah, I mean the way they killed him was interesting because the idea is that he's going to get a lift. His helicopter will pick him up and he'll get away, and he's like basically pushed Vicky and Batman over the edge. They're hanging onto the edge of the building, and he's like kicking away bits of the building, and then he fires the grappling hook connected to the gargoyle onto the Joker's leg, so he gets pulled off the ladders he's on because he can't hold on.
Because he can't, and he didn't get pulled off earlier by Vicky.
No, I mean I was going to say my choice of wording then. I was just hoping you'd run with it. I really was as soon as I said it. But yeah, so there's no sexual release, only release from life for him. But I mean, the reality is if you have that gargoyle hanging around his arms would just be ripped out the sockets.
Yeah, his hips would have dislocated in the meantime.
Yeah. He'd need a chiropractor. Actually, that's true. Either his arms would be ripped out the socket or his leg would be just ripped out of its socket, wouldn't it? So he'd probably be torn asunder. But that is and I'm pissed off that I can't remember, but it's a classic film shot, the way he falls. It's from a that style of the way he drops, and the way it's shot with him as a receding further and further into the distance when he then crashes into the ground it's a very old film. It's taken from a historic film, but it's driving me mad. So I was watching something where they actually talked about it being used over and over again in films, but I can't remember what it's from. But to have the Joker then dead on the ground, to have the fact he's got a little laughing pouch in his pocket. I like that as an ending. I like the introduction of things like you see the introduction of the bat symbol as a way of that he can be working with the city in the future. and Vicky goes off with Alfred, and Bruce is on a rooftop awaiting the signal. As an ending, I think it's good. How did you feel about that, Joanne?
I was disappointed that they killed the Joker.
Yeah.
Probably because I know that there's such a connection between them in the comics. I think it was a waste of the character. I wish he had got away. I actually wish he had got away. That would have been more satisfying for me. There is that bit that you wonder, oh, is he alive? Because the laugh bag is still going, but it turns out, no, he's dead. Well, you think he's dead. I kind of hoped that maybe he would appear at some point. I think it was a waste of the character. He shouldn't have been killed.
Yeah.
It could have even been left a bit like Michelle Pfeiffer, Catwoman.
Yes.
Is she dead? Is she alive? And I think they really should have done that for the Joker. Fair enough, Jack Nicholson probably wouldn't have come back to play him again, but to me, they wrote off one of the most substantial characters in the DC universe, and one, too, that defines who Batman is. Because the accusation to Batman every time in the comics is, why have you not killed him? Look how many thousands he has murdered, and you've never done it. You've never had the balls to take him down. You know you should have done that. And that forms some guilt as well for Batman, that he won't kill, but he knows that every time he sends a Joker away, he gets out again, and he does it all over. So Batman, in many respects, is responsible for all the deaths that Joker carries out.
So if you could have, because we discussed this a bit, I would have done things differently on other films. How would you, other than keeping the Joker alive, what else would you have changed to make this a perfect film for you?
Oh, gosh, that's a good question. Well, yeah, definitely keeping the Joker alive. Not quite sure how he would have got away, but I do think they could have come up with something. I suppose in some ways it would have been hard maybe not to have gone down the cheesy route. I don't think I would have had Bruce and Vicky falling into this lovely relationship at the end. I would be able to forgive Alfred for what he had done, for compromising Bruce that way. So maybe leaving Vicky with the thought, I wonder, is that Bruce Wayne? Because it was teased in Superman, the original Richard Donner movies. I don't remember Superman, Vicky Vale finding out that Superman is Clark Kent in the first movie. It's been a long, long time since I've seen that, but that's not my overriding memory. I think they rushed it a wee bit.
You mean Lois?
Perhaps. Lois.
You mean Lois finding out?
Lois, yeah. No, that'll be her. I get my names mixed up as usual. So, because I'm just trying to remember, did she? I think they could have. They could have dragged this out.
Definitely not
in the first one, no. So I don't think there were. Maybe they didn't think there would be another Batman movie, and that's why they played all their cards in this one.
Probably not. Yeah, probably
maybe that's
because
why.
They were putting their, they were probably working on the principle. If this isn't successful, we're never ever going to see this. Will not, we'll never see the likes of this again. And I do kind of agree with that, because maybe giving him a sadder ending where he's alone would have been better. Like they did with Return.
Or Bruce or Joker, sorry, alone. Which
Bruce, because Bruce would have always, in reality, he's always going to be alone, and I think that could have added a real interesting thing to him. Him yet. Maybe they could have ended it like when you see the cartoon Batman Mask of the Phantasm, where you see that really Bruce can't have a happy life. He can't settle down with anyone because his crusade as Batman is always going to take over.
Yep. It just was, and I think actually if they had have done that, not killed Joker and not had the two take up together, that still would have set it up perfectly okay as a standalone movie. I think that would have been okay as a standalone movie. it would have been more intriguing because you would have been adding different bits and pieces in your head. Oh, I wonder, had the Joker gone off to this? Fan fiction could have taken him somewhere else. But instead, no, you've ended the Joker and Bruce Wayne and Vicky Vale are together. And I think in the end, she probably spent more time with Alfred than she did with Bruce.
Well, yeah. Do you know that's the sort of thing you believe? Actually, she would. She would basically spend all the time hanging out with him.
Which I'm sure he was delightful company. And if he's anything like Alfred in Pennyworthy, the series, that would have been an Alfred you'd really would have wanted to hang out with. But certainly, I don't know. I mean, she seemed quite happy about it at the end of the movie, but I thought, I give you 3 months and you will be well fucked off with sitting around waiting all day long.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I mean, it would be very difficult.
The good guy gets the good guy gets the girl. That's what I'm going for. It was a classic trope. The guy gets the girl in the end, and he did.
So, what I'm interested to also know, Joanne, is what do you remember from? And I sort of like asked you a little bit at the start, but what memories do you have when this came out?
Well, mostly the hype. I actually did see it in the cinema, and there was everyone was very, very excited about this movie coming out because we hadn't had a real superhero movie. There was the superhero movies. There would have been the Superman movies, but this was the first time that we had something that didn't have the hope of Superman. Superman was always portrayed. Those films always had that lovely light and airy feeling, and quite emotional films as well for the early ones. But this Batman felt very different, and because I was a huge Batman fan, this was the one I was really looking forward to. So when I seen it in the cinema at the time, it blew my socks off. I went to see it twice, actually. I loved it so much, I had to go and see it twice.
Good girl. Good girl.
Yeah, I just had to go and see it twice.
I have that problem with
the hype
films.
Was fantastic.
I have, yeah.
It was really... I was just going to say, for me at that time, it was amazing. I loved it. Now, it was blown out of the water for me once I went to see Batman Returns, which I also went to see twice. But certainly, I think they did Batman justice. This was the Batman probably the fans had been waiting decades for. I mean, if this had been touted, first of all, in 1982, that's a long time to be in production hell.
Mm-hmm.
For such a successful character, such a well-known character as well, for them to be languishing that way. And through all the... Sam Hamm was one of the writers as well. I remember I actually have the comics that he did. After that, there was other stories that didn't appear in the movie because he had written some of the early scripts and he put them into the DC produced comics of it. I think I actually have that comic as well.
Mm-hmm.
But yes, at the time, that was the Batman I wanted to see. Looked very different, but it was a natural progression from what you've seen on the page. And let's face it, this set the standard. Your superheroes now on TV and in the movies don't have that almost basic the tights and the underwear over the top of their clothes look to them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
They're always by the time you translate it into something real, it has to be believable. And now audiences wouldn't take it. The only thing is, what I don't like is watching something now where the superhero is basically just wearing their ordinary clothes and they're calling themselves whoever. I miss, it nearly went too far the opposite way. I know what Watchmen is very, it was more hyper realistic, but they still had the costumes. So to me, you could still do that. But I really did like the way they made Batman suddenly believable because it wouldn't have worked from the comics. So I bloody loved it. I'm wittering here because I'm trying to think. It was such a passionate thing for me, and toys and comics and books and everything that came out that I could grab onto. I had it, and I still have them actually. So yeah, it meant a lot to me at that time, and all the Batman fans.
I mean, what I remember, I don't really remember the film coming out, but I think I kind of do. But it probably didn't. It hasn't impacted in my memory as much. But I remember people having the toys to play with at school. And I have a very nice memory of when it came out on VHS. For those who are too young, that's a video cassette, children, and that's what was before DVDs. And if you're really young, that's what was before Blu-ray.
Oh gosh, videos.
Yeah, video. So videos. I remember my mother. We went to the local video store and I saw the video and I said, "Mum, can we hire this? Can we rent this out?" And she said, "James, I don't think this is for children." Because would have probably been like 7 or something, or no, probably about 7 or 9 or 10 or something. Far too young to see it. But I remember
you could have watched it at that age. I think it's looking at it now. I think you could have seen it.
Yeah, well, probably, yeah. But here's where it gets interesting. So I recall, I think I had the figure. I think I got the figure, the Batman toy quite later on, because the problem that the company was hit with is that it produced a Batman figure, but they didn't realise how successful the film would be. So a lot of the stuff was just like repackaged toys they'd already had. But I do remember going to like Toys R Us. Well, the Joker figure they produced was just like whatever the Joker figure was before that. I think for some reason they did the Robin figure. I know they did Bob the Goon, but I remember for quite a long time you would see the toys in like Toys R Us and whatnot. But I saw Batman, and here's the interesting one. I remember seeing it. It was in the UK when it was the big, big Christmas Day film. It was on BBC One. I might have been 10 or something, I want to say, maybe a bit older or a bit younger. And I remember I was at my uncle and aunt's house, and that's the house that's haunted. But I remember being at that house watching the film. And I've only mentioned that because Gemma always gives me crap for repeating the haunted house story.
I'm a skeptic, so we'll have a conversation about that sometime. In fact, you know what? There's the conversation. You can tell Gabrielle and I that. You can tell us in a future episode of Celluloid Coswell. You can tell us the haunted house story. Do you see the difference in the two answers that you get?
I really look forward to that, because I just have a chat with you about it. I really do. But I remember sitting watching the film and being amazed by it, but also being quite scared of the Joker, because I found this idea of this weird deformed guy quite unnerving. And even when you saw him like with the normal sort of like human makeup on, as being pretty scary. And certainly the scene where he's all bandaged up and looking, before, when you don't really see him and he's pulling, all the stuff off, I found that quite terrifying as a child. So I think Mum was onto something, that dear mother, when she said to me, this maybe isn't one for kids. But I do remember that, and just that sort of big push around it. And then trying to get more and more things as I got older, and getting it on like DVD. I don't think I ever got it on VHS. I got Batman Returns on VHS, but I think I had a copy of it off TV for Batman, and then getting it on DVD and Blu-ray, and just loving getting the special edition DVDs and everything, just loving it. And one thing I really wanted to buy a few years ago was you could buy a big model of the Batmobile. But it was like hundreds of pounds for this thing. But it was just amazing. I didn't see that. Yeah, if I saw it again now, I might buy it. I might, but it's the practicality, because it's nearly a meter sort of thing in size. So it's a big thing. But yeah, it's incredibly impressive. And I used to love seeing things in like the Warner Brothers store that I mentioned in our last one, where they had like the bat suit, but the Returns bat suit, and a model of, the Penguin and Catwoman. But yeah, the level and the influence this film has had can never be discounted, because it's Superman influenced this okay to a degree. Superman did have a massive influence on superhero. Superman had this massive influence on superhero films, but this, the knock-on of Batman, just say the suit design. Every suit since it's always been that style. A lot of the superhero suits you see now again in films are copied of that style. This vast idea of a film, the strange artistic qualities. And the big one that we've not touched on is the score for this film.
Oh, yes. It's playing in my head, actually, particularly the end, particularly the end one, because it's so uplifting where he's standing on the building and he's looking up at the bat symbol, or sorry, the bat light. Not the bat light. What do you call it?
It is the bat symbol.
It's the bat light. Well, yeah, but being projected into the sky.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And
spotlight.
It's such an
spotlight.
Yeah.
The bat signal.
Good grief.
Yeah.
I think it was brains fried there. I couldn't think. And it was just it's very uplifting the way it is. But the Danny Elfman, I was reading a thing that Danny Elfman, whose music has been in Army of Darkness and The Simpsons, just about everything. I just love Danny Elfman's work. Apparently they were always brilliant. There was a bit of concern about him doing it. And then the studio heard his Batman theme tune and thought, wow, this is it. It's never been beaten. You start to sing that and people instantly, well, maybe not if I sang it because I can't sing. If you start to hum that, people recognize it right away. And it's very, you want to sort of like, doon, doodly doon, doodly doon.
Yeah.
And sort of your fists go and as a kid, you're like, I want to run down the street and put a towel across your shoulders and fight crime. And it was very much of that. You believed you were Batman when you heard that. And that's if you were Batman, that's what you'd want to hear riding into battle. It's as well known as the Star Trek theme tunes, the various series of Star Trek. I'm trying to think, what else is just as recognizable as that? Ghostbusters.
the big one is the Superman.
Oh yes, of course.
Theme. I mean that is like again the really big one. So, and I guess things like the RoboCop theme are ones that get your attention. But you're right, they stick in your mind forever. And I think was it John Peters or one of them was sort of saying that they were a bit skeptical about, like you were saying, a bit skeptical about Elfman. But I think we'll say it was John Peters. He brought him in, and they weren't sure about the music, and Tim Burton's going, play the Batman music, playing the theme to show how amazingly it'd be as a piece of music. And because I think there's a huge element of the film owes an awful lot to that as well as happened with Superman. An awful lot to the music.
There was the two Batman movies that Tim Burton did with Danny, and both of them, the soundtracks stand on their own. There was two versions of the soundtracks. Yeah, there was the Prince version, and there was Danny's version. Yeah, and both of them sold apparently extremely well, really, really well. And then you had the soundtrack for Batman Returns. Are you making a cup of tea?
Maybe.
I can hear that. I hear
clink, clink,
it's
clink.
like it was. For a moment, I thought I was talking to Mrs. Doyle. I could hear the teacups rattling in the background. But there was. Go on. But there was like just amazing soundtracks. Before I go off into Father Ted world, because I just love Father Ted, and the soundtracks were phenomenal. They were soundtracks that you would buy.
Yeah.
It wasn't just something that was playing on in the background. You wanted to hear that. You would sit in your living room and go, oh yeah, I think I'll put Batman on, or I think I'll put Batman Returns, and thoroughly enjoy it. And it takes you into the scenes. The scenes are dictated by the music, whether it's Prince and Party Man, which you don't like, which I still love. There's another few Prince ones in it as well, which have just completely gone out of my head now, because all I can hear is the Danny Elfman music playing in speakers.
I can throw in a little bit of information, which is if you watch the music video to Bat Dance, somewhere in that video is Michael Keaton.
Oh, I must watch that. It's been a long, long time since I've seen it.
He guested in it. So, what would you give this out of 5?
Oh, I think I would give it 8.5. Oh no, hang on, I've done it again.
I mean, yeah, you can do. I was going to say, you can give it that. It will confuse the scoring system.
I did that the last time too. Every time you ask me what would you give it out of 5, I automatically give it out of 10. I think I would probably give this a 4.
I was going to say, if somebody works in finance, that I'll be sat with you going, no, you've not really given the information. What percentage of...
Look, I'll tell you a scary thing. I used to write business cases. And the joke at home is that I always get my zeros mixed up, and yet I would be writing these business cases for so many thousands of pounds. There was a few I wrote for a few million, and yet I always got my zeros in the right place in these business cases, particularly the financial section. But when I came to anything outside, no, always put an extra 0 on things or not enough zeros.
To be fair, it's kind of like
me.
It's like when I studied part of my degree, I studied accountancy, and I think I've told you this story before, and if I have, I'm sorry that I'm repeating it, but I initially didn't pass, so I had somebody helping me go over it again, and they just went, and I did pass in the end, don't be through, but they went, the hard part you've got, so the simple part you don't seem to have been able to work out. So maybe our brains all work oddly.
Yeah, I think maybe we really should have been doing the books for the mafia.
Yeah.
Our ability to move the zeros around the place. Yeah. And I can't even remember now what we were talking about apart from Danny Elfman and the fact that I can hear that is stuck in my head now. I'm gonna fall asleep tonight to the rousing theme tune from Batman.
Yeah, if you start humming it, this is my apology to Simon now. Keeping him away.
Look, he fucking loves this film. We sat and watched it the other night, and he absolutely loves it. Now, as any red-blooded male, he has the absolute hots for Vicky Vale, for Kim Basinger.
Right. Damn right.
He loves her. Yeah, it's too much. Too much for him. He doesn't say much, but I just know by his reaction. I'm not saying he gets a hard on when he sees her. I don't mean that sort of reaction. Fuck, it's the wrong thing to say. But I just know that he just adores her, and he likes he likes Michelle Pfeiffer. But I think Vicky Vale's the one that does for him. Whereas for me, I think it would have to be Michelle Pfeiffer. But like, good on Bruce. He didn't actually have sex with Catwoman in the end, but he has great taste in women. I mean, let's talk about Bruce's taste in women. I get the feeling too that there was a bit of definite flirtation from Batfleck to Wonder Woman to Diana Prince.
Oh, definitely.
He wasn't getting anything back, like, but because she's still obsessed with Steve, she calls him, who's been dead for about 6 million years. Who she can't get over, and don't even get me started in Wonder Woman. Oh dear, especially Wonder Woman. I love Wonder Woman 1, Wonder Woman 2, definitely problematic film. But yes, per Batfleck is trying his damnedest to go, you know who I am, don't you? I'm really hot. I'm this, I'm that. She's not picking up.
I'm a billionaire, yeah.
I'm a billionaire.
I'm a billionaire. Yeah.
I'm a billionaire. No, this is it. She's going, yeah, like whatever, I can live forever. But appeared to have only had sex with one man, so it gets a wee bit more sad. But yeah, I think Bruce is a lucky man. That's where I'm going with that. Bruce is a very lucky man. And by the way, have you ever seen 9.5 Weeks?
Yes, but not for a long, long time. But yeah, I have seen 9.5 Weeks.
Yeah, it's another film with a great soundtrack. Really good soundtrack.
Yeah, it's got music from one of my favourite performers in it, Brian Ferry, actually. So yeah, it is a good film.
I have good seen music. It for a long time. Yeah, it was seen as quite raunchy for its days. Now, if I watched it, I probably would think, well, it's quite tame.
It's Mickey Rourke, where he actually looked like a human being.
Yes. Now he looks like. Well, I didn't even recognise him in Iron Man initially. I had to look up who it was.
He looks even worse now, unfortunately.
Oh yeah, I don't know what's happened there.
we're getting sidetracked. So
We are.
So I would probably give this 4 out of 5 just for what it created and what it allowed to happen with films. And yeah, I think it's a really good film. Aesthetically, I love it, but I love what it morphed into with what Batman Returns became. But I just think it was a great film, very well done, very well put together, and I highly recommend it to anyone who wants to see really how the superhero genre as we know it sort of really became and started out.
Yeah, I would love to know if any of the salty people are listening who haven't watched this yet, who then go on to watch it, what your thoughts are.
Yes.
What it is to watch it
agree.
now after there's been after the superhero market has been flooded to the point that I think people could get very sick of it. Marvel has had a great run, but I know this WandaVision is fairly dividing people's opinions. Some love it, some don't, some are a bit meh. So I would love to know what someone who's only been watching superhero movies the last few years watches a much older superhero film.
Yeah,
and thinks
definitely.
of it. What's your thoughts? Because you're going to see things. Yeah, please do, because I'm thinking that you would watch something and think, oh God, it's a bit boring. But what you don't realise is that what's being done in those movies was possibly being done for the first time. And don't forget, this is what spawned Batman the Animated Adventures, which is the best Batman cartoon series ever. The other ones were good, but the Batman Animated Adventures would never have existed without this. Therefore, you wouldn't have Harley, who appeared in the Batman Adventures. So this film, this is the film that paved the way for us nerds.
And on that note, I certainly think we've been chatting enough celluloid codswallop, and I cannot think of a better thing to sign off on. So, as ever, I have been James.
And I'm Batwoman. Or sorry, I should say, I'm Batwoman.
Have a good one, everyone, and stay safe.
Bye.